Ibrahim Traore and Diomaye Faye are very interesting young presidents in West African countries. One is the president of Senegal, who was legally elected in April. The other took over through a coup in Burkina Faso. So that's what we're looking at, because they've had a meeting a few days ago. We're looking at the discussions that stemmed from this meeting and the expected outcome from these meetings. So welcome to the Alpha House once again. I hope by now you're subscribed, and if you're not, please hit the subscription button, and thanks for always coming back to, share in the comment section what we talk about, and we keep learning from each other. So Senegal's new president, he was sworn in April, so he's still new, visited President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, recently visited Burkina Faso to meet the army junta, President Ibrahim Traore. Traore, of course, took over through a coup some times back, and Diomaye also visited Mali's junta, Assimi Goïta, another one who took over through a coup, in what is termed as trips to unite the West African nations. These meetings were seen as crucial in terms of strengthening ties with these two states, who actually both quit Ecowas somewhere in late last year, early this year. So remember, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger also are all under military rule following the coups that took place between 2021 and 2023. So in January 2024, the trio announced that they were quitting the Economic Community of West Africa States, which is now the full in ECOWAS, which they said was under French influence, and they felt that ECOWAS was not meeting its obligations as is expected from the West African nations, but they were rather pushing the agenda of France through the different leaders that were in place. Hence why they decided to take over the three nations at different times, but both also decided to quit ECOWAS at the same time. So when they quit ECOWAS, the trio announced that they were forming their own regional grouping, which is now called the Alliance of Sahel States. So Diomaye arrived in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, and was received at the Thomas Sankara International Airport by the Burkinabe president, Captain Ibrahim Traore, who led him through all the reception ceremonies that come with a president visiting another nation. Talks between Traore and Diomaye had been set mainly to focus on strengthening various areas of mutual cooperation between Senegal and Burkina Faso. So the key issues that have been in most of the West African nations are on security, development, economy, regional integration, which basically was looking at the possibility of having Burkina Faso come back to ECOWAS. And of course, it's not just Burkina Faso, it's Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. So the Senegal's president is actually acting as the uniting factor for these three nations. So from these meetings that he's had, he's trying to have these nations come back to the regional bloc so that they can improve on these issues, because if you talk about security, it affects the three nations. When you talk about development, they trade so much together. So without the unity that ECOWAS brings, then probably they are lacking in a lot of other things. So maybe that's why the Senegal president feels the three nations should actually come back, so it becomes easier for all of them to work together. Also interesting is that the Nigerian president, Tinubu, was pushing for the comeback of Burkina Faso to ECOWAS for purposes of trade and different issues also, and also security, because those West African nations face pretty similar challenges. So they were hoping that they can get back and sort that problem. So Diomaye Faye has made several trips in West Africa since he was sworn in April. And remember, he was the youngest, continent's youngest elected president in early April 2024. Youngest elected, because Traore is young but not elected, so that makes the whole difference. So in terms of democracy, he's the one who's democratically elected and the youngest in the continent. So he's done so many trips, and this trip to Burkina Faso actually marked his 10th visit to an African state since assuming office. Remember, he was sworn in April, so that means in April and May, and now that we are in June, so in 2 months, he's done 11 trips internationally. Kenyans keep complaining that our president likes to be on the move all the time. I don't know if he's also familiar with 2 months doing around 11 visits, because I feel like this means he's almost away almost every week. Every 2 weeks he's away. Not even, actually it's like a weekly thing. If you're doing 11 in 2 months, it means you're on the move every week. So I hope these travels are actually resorting to something, because these guys, when they were voting, when they were campaigning, they promised the Burkinabe people a lot of, growth and improvement of the nation, and we hope that these trips are actually geared towards that. So the Senegalese presidency issued a statement saying that these visits are part of a drive to strengthen the historic ties of good neighborliness, fraternal friendship, solidarity, and multifaceted cooperation. So I think they also feel like they're doing too much trade, and maybe people started talking about that they had to issue a statement to tell the people why they were important. Well, these countries, that is Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, these coup plotters maintain tense relationships with some of their West African counterparts, and especially, the West nations such as France and the US. Interestingly, they share the same Pan-Africanist, sovereignist rhetoric with the Senegalese president, like the things that the Senegal president promised to work for, which was key to get away from the CFA franc issue, get independence from France. These guys who lead countries from coups actually stand for the same thing. So this is one thing the four nations share, and they're hoping that with a common mind in place in terms of what they want to achieve, then they will be able to get where they want to be for their nations. Remember, Diomaye was elected on a platform where he was advocating for a break from the neocolonial order and a promise of change. Neocolonial order here, one of the key things that he really pushed for was for the nations of West Africa to stop using the CFA franc, and also in terms of mining issues that happen, whereby guys in Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, all the mining goes on, but the money goes to France instead of the locals gaining. So these are things that actually got him to the position of power. So these nations basically share the same problems, and they actually campaigning for the same things in terms of what they want to achieve at the end of the day. So during his inaugurations, they had guests from Mali and Burkina Faso who came in. And when these people were stood up to greet the people, they were actually cheered a lot by the Burkinabe people, because they felt like they share a common goal, and they felt these are brothers, in unity in terms of what they want. So it's very interesting that these nations are now looking to work together. Earlier in the month, while in Abidjan, Diomaye issued a statement where he said, and I quote, "I am convinced that we must continue to act in solidarity with the Ecowas space, make the necessary reforms, and work to dispel the misunderstandings that are bound to arise." So basically he's saying these things are common, like people may have their issues, but it's best if they're able to resolve these issues so that the nations can work together for the good. And the question here is does Diomaye feel that he's the uniting factor for these nations? Number two, also the fact that he was against the France way of ruling, rather neo-colonizing the West African nations. He was against it. Does it mean now that he's shifting gears so that, he still wants to have French people and also just stand for his people? Maybe this was one of the issues, and that's what a lot of people are debating. Earlier in the month, he also said that he continued affirming his statement that ECOWAS is a formidable tool for integration that we will gain by preserving. So the message was directly addressed to these three other presidents of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, which he was telling them that the alliance of Sahel states is actually jeopardizing the survival of the regional organization, which has been there for longer, which is ECOWAS. So the question again is, does this mean he feels they can work better now with France, or is he finding a different way of working out things together that these other presidents have not experienced? We can only wait and see. So immediately following President Faye's statement in Burkina Faso, he and President Traore were actually seen driving together in the same car. So that was a show of brotherhood and just what he was talking about earlier, the fraternal relationships for the better. The conversations, it would be very interesting to hear the conversations that were going on in that car, because it was just the two of them, I think, and the driver. So in such a scenario, it would be good to, you know, because now it's what we are working on is imagination. What did they discuss in that, while in that car? Did they say they need to exit? Did they say they'll come back? We can only wait and see what happens. So of course it was a symbolic gesture which raised curiosity about their discussion and potential implications for the regional cooperation. Ecowas aims basically to promote economic integration and political stability among its members, while the Sahel nations, which is what these other three nations have put up, the Sahel Alliance, focuses on addressing security and development issues in the Sahel region. So which again faces significant challenges such as terrorism, poverty, and climate change. Like the whole Sahel region have common problems. And that is what the organization of the alliance rather aims at curbing or solving. So Diomaye will next, actually is preparing to go to France for an official trip on the 20th of June, and is expected to meet France President Emmanuel Macron. It's very interesting because Macron was actually supporting a different candidate who is the former Prime Minister Amadou Ba during the campaign season. So it's interesting that now he's going to meet someone who was not even for him in the elections. And also seeing that France has suffered a loss of its long-lived grip in West Africa, is now during this meeting, is it meant to, you know, like do away with that? Is it meant to bring French back? Is it a risk for these nations that already plotted coups and sent away the Frenchmen and the army guys that were there, or what happens next? I'm sure this is a meeting that is of great concern, not just to Senegal, but to these other Sahel alliance nations, because this meeting will have an implication, not just for Senegal, but for all of them. Number two, it would be interesting to actually just hear what these presidents have to say, because they are totally against France, and they've actually started forming formations with countries like Russia, because we've even seen Vladimir Putin visit those, you know, have meetings with some of these leaders. So looking at it from that perspective, it will be very interesting to see what happens in that meeting and the implications and the outcome of that meeting, and what that means for these nations that actually exit ECOWAS, and if this would actually just open, you know, another Pandora's box of what happens next. Do people come back? Do they exit? I don't know. I can't wait to see what stems from this 20th June meeting. So Diomaye also was very radical during his campaigns on fighting France. But these meetings seem to maybe, I don't know if he shifted gears and now he's okay with France, or is he trying to be the person that works as the bridge between Africa and France? You share in the comment section what do you think. Also, Senegalese people, if you're watching, what do you feel about your president visiting the France President Emmanuel Macron? Having in mind that you are so excited when you got a new president who was against the old order and putting up a new order for Africa. Share with us in the comment section and, you know, tell us what you think about these meetings and the developments that are happening in your region. Again, we wait for 20th June and see what happens, and then from that, we will have a talk and see if our discussion today is actually aligned with what happens on the 20th of June. Thanks for watching today. Share in the comment section your feelings, and we'll catch you on the next one.